What's happening, guys? Adam Nemini, CEO Aerospares 2000, and welcome to my very first video blog where I cover some of my favorite aircraft parts. What I absolutely love about our industry is that there are thousands of different part numbers out there, and each one tells its own story. What we say here is that if you want to talk the talk, you need to be able to walk the walk, and you need to learn the different products. Every morning, I always start off by going into the warehouse and checking a new part out, and you learn so much just by seeing them, speaking to your quality managers, the inspectors, and finding out all the various details about it. So kicking off, I wanted to start off by covering fire extinguishers. Now, when you talk about fire extinguishers, people assume you're going to cover one of these, the ones that are more recognizable. And they do go on the aircraft in the cabin, but in today's blog, I want to cover the ones that are on other parts of the aircraft. So, namely, the circular ones are used to extinguish the fires on the engines, the APUs, and the cargo bays. What I absolutely love about them is that how cool they look. It almost looks like a mine bobbing up in the sea. And the way they work is around the engine is what we call Firewire, and that's a sensor which detects an overheat or a fire taking place. That will then trigger an alarm in the cockpit, and then the pilots have the decision whether to use the fire extinguisher, trigger it to extinguish the fire. So if we have a close-up look at the fire extinguisher, this particular one goes on a 787, but for all intents and purposes, they're very much the same. So the way these units work is you've got these two cartridges, colloquially known as squibs. And when they receive the command from the cockpit, they will trigger, and they will, with the use of an explosive contained in them, burst the fire extinguisher. And then because of the pressure inside, they will release the extinguishing agent. So the extinguishing agent inside the fire extinguisher is called Halon, and it is bar none the very best material out there to extinguish a fire. Problem with Halon is that it's very bad for the environment in that it depletes the ozone layer. So there's very limited uses that you can use them in nowadays, air transport being one of them. I mean, you wouldn't want to be on an aircraft knowing that there's a second-rate material out there extinguishing the fire. So Halon is allowed for aviation use. However, whoever handles fire extinguishers with Halon in them in the EU, including the UK, must have the licenses which Aerospares 2000 do. So apart from the Halon itself, you've also got the pressure switch. The pressure switch will let the pilots know in the cockpit that's depleting, hence it's working. Another thing to consider with fire extinguishers, and a lot of people not familiar with them don't take into account, is that it needs special handling. These are very heavy units. You can see these delicate sensors and probes coming out of it. This pressure sensor alone, $6,000. We've actually had custom made these special foam holders for the fire extinguishers. If anyone wants some of them, by all means get in touch. We have them made and happy to sell them on. And what this enables us to do is inspect them in a safe environment. If you were to just handle them on a workbench, if it leans over, there's every chance you could twist or damage one of the expensive probes, which you don't want to do. Another thing is that these cartridges, which contain explosives in them, are electrically fired. So that means you have to always exercise ESD control. Now, most aircraft parts, by and large, as long as they've got an FAA 8130, EASA Form 1 airworthiness certification, they're good to go. One of the things I really enjoy when we deal with fire extinguishers is that they're actually quite a complicated unit. These items have not one, not two, three, and possibly even 4 different expiry dates. And people don't always take that into account when they're evaluating buying them and selling them. The first 2 expiry dates relate to the cartridges. Each cartridge typically has 10-year shelf life, and there may be different shelf lives on them. You've got to always make sure that the expiry dates are clearly mentioned on the EASA Form 1, 8130, and we even like to make sure that the serial numbers, data manufacturer is also mentioned. The next expiry date relates to hydrostatic testing. Bit of a mouthful, HST for short. What a hydrostatic test does is that you have to ensure this pressurized vessel can hold the charge. These units operate at a very high PSI. If there's a microscopic crack or a kink in the fire bottle, that could lead to the unit exploding. So what they do, anything which is pressurized, whether it's a slide bottle, fire extinguisher, or even in other industries, scuba diving bottles, every few years you have to do a hydrostatic test. And we're going to go to an image of what one looks like. Essentially what you do is you strip the unit from all the various components it's got. So you've got the bare bottle. You then put that in a tank of water and you overinflate it. If there's any weakness, you'll know because you'll hear the unit go pop and explode. If it passes the various pressure settings the manufacturer requires, you know it's good to go. So regarding the Boss limits, you're not going to know how many years left on the thickness you've got. If it's been well maintained and cut with the minimum tolerances, you'll probably get 25 to 30 years on the fire extinguisher. So the first 3 expiry dates, which are key to always have on the certificate for the cartridges and the previous hydrostatic test date. You can be sure when Aerospares 2000 quotes your unit, we've already vetted that. We're using the best shops who overhaul these units, and you're going to get all that important data. I hope this has been an interesting one for you guys. If you've enjoyed, please give me some feedback and hope to hear from you soon.